Hello there. Welcome to another live stream with me, Lar Ryan from Complete Test Success. So today's live stream is pretty straightforward. It's just a Q&A. So each week I try to go through a different topic in these live streams. I don't cover reading and listening because with reading and listening, it requires a bit more back and forth to figure out the problems. I do address reading and listening in my live feedback lessons on Zoom. Those are my free group classes. You can click on the link to join those. But what we normally do is go through like task 1, general training, task 1, academic, task 2, speaking. And then I have this lesson where it's a Q&A. So basically any questions you have about any part of the test really, or about just in general improving your English. So if you have any questions about any part of the test or how to improve your English, ask me those questions. Or if you have any confusion about what you're supposed to be doing, let me know what you're confused about. Or if you just have any problems that you don't know how to resolve, just let me know what those are and I'll give you the advice you need to overcome your issues. Ilyas, hello to you. Welcome to the live stream. If you have any questions, go ahead. Feel free to ask and I'll answer those for you. So as well as these live streams, I also have one-on-one IELTS courses. I should have this prepared, but I didn't. I have a link here for my courses. So if any of you, typically, I think for those of you who haven't done the test before, you just follow the advice that I've provided online and see how you get on. But for people who've done the test before and they're not getting the scores they need, and the problem then is they don't really know why they're not getting the scores they need. They don't understand what they're doing wrong. So I think those are the types of people that I can help most, because some people will get their scores first time, they go and do the test, get their scores, great, fantastic. Other people, they're doing the test over and over and over again, and it's the same result, but they don't know why their scores aren't improving. So if you're in that situation, I think my one-on-one courses would be more beneficial for you than the free resources online. So if you need that help, reach out and let me know what kind of situation you're in. Let me know basically, what your previous scores are, what your target scores are, how long you have before you're doing the test again, and very importantly, how many hours you are able to study every day. I'm in Afghanistan and I have one question. Sure, fire away. Tell me your question, no problem. And BB asks how to get past 6.5 in reading. So it doesn't really matter what your current score is. Everybody's approach to improving their scores is going to be the same. So step 1 has to be doing a practice test. You do a practice test, and then obviously there'll be some answers you got right and some answers you got wrong. Step 2 then is to focus on the answers you got wrong. And this is where most students kind of don't improve their scores effectively, because they'll just see, okay, that was the wrong answer I chose. This was the correct answer. Okay. And that's all that they do. And then they move on, do another practice test. What you want to do is you want to look at every incorrect answer and identify, why did I choose the wrong answer? What did I do wrong here? Like, is it because I didn't know the vocab? Is it because I spelled the word incorrectly? Is it because I didn't read the text properly? Is it because the strategy I'm using is too complicated? Is it, there could be many, many reasons, but basically what you're doing is you're thinking back to when you were doing that practice test and what was going on in your head and how did you end up arriving at the wrong answer. You have to be as specific as possible. So what happens then is after you've gone through all of the incorrect answers, you'll have a list of reasons why you got each one wrong. So if you got 10 answers wrong, you'll have 10 reasons for choosing the incorrect answer. Some of them might be duplicates. Some of them might be the same problem more than once. Some of them will be issues with vocab. Now, what you want to do is you want to focus on the problems that were unrelated to vocabulary. Because if the problem is vocab, it could take you months and months to improve your vocab to the point that you're now able to get more answers correct. So don't worry about those ones. Just try to fix all the other problems first. Once you start fixing your problems, you'll see your score start to improve. So you take action on your problems, whatever you need to do to fix those problems. Sometimes it will just be approaching the questions a little bit differently in the next test. Sometimes it will be working on your spelling or, whatever it would be. Once you see what the problems are, very often the solutions become quite obvious. Take action, make an attempt to improve, come back, do another practice test, see if your scores have improved, repeat the process, checking all your incorrect answers, finding out exactly why you got those ones wrong, and just go through that cycle again and again. I mean, eventually you'll get to the place where the only reasons you're getting answers wrong is because of vocabulary. And if you're still not getting your score when all the other problems have been solved except for vocab, then you have no choice. You're going to have to start working on vocab. And as I said, that can take months. So, hopefully you'll be able to get your score without needing to study vocab. But if that's the situation you're in, you have no choice and you're just going to have to go and fix it. Okay. So, Khalil, thanks for offering your services. You're very welcome, Khalil. Welcome to the lesson. I have a problem in matching headings to paragraphs in reading task. Okay. Now, most IELTS reading strategies will tell you to go question by question, right? So if you go question by question, it's you read question 1, you choose the keywords, you go to the text, you scan the text to try and find the keywords, or it might not be a keyword, it might be a synonym of the keyword. Once you find that keyword or the synonym of that keyword, you read the sentence. It's like, that's very complicated. So this isn't specifically about matching headings, but just in general, that's the type of strategy that that IELTS teachers provide their students in terms of reading. Once you've eventually found the correct sentence, you read it, you answer question 1, then you go back, you move on to question 2, find the keyword, and then scan the text again. So what happens is you're never really reading the text. You're trying to find the answers without ever reading the text. It's a very complicated way of doing it. So what I would suggest is the other way around. What you do is you read paragraph 1 from start to end, no skimming, no scanning, no keywords, nothing, just like you would read a book or a newspaper or anything. So read all of paragraph 1. Now, after reading the full thing, you know exactly what it's about. And then you're going to go through every single question. So there'll be 13 questions. And having read paragraph 1 and kind of having a good idea about what that's about, as you go through all 13 questions, there will be some you can answer. Once you're finished, you move on to paragraph 2. You do the same thing again. Now, when you're going paragraph by paragraph, it's a lot easier to do those matching headings questions. So the thing is, if you're skimming and scanning and never reading the full paragraph, you're trying to read 1 or 2 sentences and guess in general what the paragraph is about. That's more challenging. Once you've read the full paragraph, it becomes that much easier because you've read it. You know what it's about. And then, of course, once you know what it's actually about, choosing the correct heading becomes a lot easier. The next problem then is that sometimes the headings look very similar. And they intentionally do this. So Cambridge will write 2 headings that look the same. So for example, you might think it's heading number 1 or heading number 4, but the problem is you don't understand how number 1 and number 4 are different. When you read them, they look the exact same. And that's just a problem with your language ability. So they are intentionally written in that way. So if your problem then is, you know what the paragraph is about, you're pretty sure it's number 1 or number 4, but you can't tell the difference between those 2 headings. I mean, right there, while you're doing your practice test, there's nothing you can really do at that point except guess, because you don't have the language ability to tell the difference. So in that situation, then what you do is just guess quickly rather than guessing slowly, because you could spend 5 minutes trying to figure out what the difference is. But in reality, it doesn't matter how long you spend on it. You just don't know the difference. So at that point, guess quickly, use that time you've saved by guessing quickly to hopefully get more answers correct later on. Okay. Ilyas, I prepare myself for IELTS by doing self-study. I have no one to get feedback when I complete my writing practice. What should I do? So in terms of feedback, so I mean, if you have somebody like, you get someone like an engineer or something, and even if, you know, if you have any friends or family members who are engineers, they're usually very, very good. Or, you know, somebody who's more logically minded like that, checking if the ideas are relevant and specific and if you've developed them appropriately, you know. So maybe you could have someone like that check for you. You can use ChatGPT or something to check your grammar mistakes. The problem with ChatGPT then is it'll start recommending like very specific vocab that people wouldn't normally use. It's not very good at checking task response or coherence and cohesion scores, but it could certainly help you with the grammar. You know, it could point out your grammar mistakes so that you can fix those. So, you know, maybe getting someone, it wouldn't necessarily have to be, you know, if you have a friend who's an engineer, it wouldn't be necessarily that they would have to be able to speak English. You could just write down the ideas and how you're going to develop them in your own language, and they could tell you if they were appropriate or not. So, you know, in that way, you could be getting some feedback on your ideas from one person, and then with grammar from ChatGPT and things like that. So there are things you can do. Like I was saying, I do offer an essay correction service. So, you know, if you send your essays to me, it would be, you know, I'll correct all the vocab, grammar, explain the mistakes as I'm correcting them. I make a video as my feedback. That's the format I do. And then obviously, you know, explaining the scores. So if you got a band 6 for task response, it would be, okay, you got a band 6. Here's why you didn't get a band 7. Your development here isn't actually about the idea you said you discussed. So, you know, I can explain exactly what you're doing. So if you're interested, reach out. Like I said, that's my email address there. If you want me to give you, if you want to use my correction service. Your desired band score is 8.5. That's very high. Most of the time when somebody tells me they need 8.5, I ask them why, and they say it's a personal goal. Okay, what score do you really need? It's like, I need 7. Okay, all right. So what will happen then is I'll tell them, right, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on getting a 7. Once you get a band 7 in your IELTS test and you're able to apply for whatever, you know, university or visa you're applying for, then come back and we'll continue working towards 8.5. And what always happens, to be honest with you, is it took them so much work to get the band 7 that they needed that they don't want to come back and do anymore. They no longer care about getting 8.5. They have the certificate they need and they can move on with their lives. So, of course, everybody wants a high score. It would be great to get a high score, but I would say focus on the score you actually need first. And then, you know, if you have enough time and money and you still have the motivation to continue working towards an 8.5 after that, by all means, go ahead. I don't think it's very beneficial, to be honest. I don't think it will really benefit you in any way at all. To get a higher score than you need, there are other things you could do to benefit your life more than getting a higher IELTS score than the score you actually need. But if that's what you really wanted to do, by all means, why not? Hi, Abdul. Sir, if I receive the unusual topic in IELTS speaking part 2, how can I cope with it? Such as they want to describe a popular place for sports that I have been to, but I've never experienced. Okay. So basically you get a part 2 topic, you don't have the experience, you don't have much experience. So what happens here is people tell themselves, I've never been to a popular sports place. Well, it doesn't have to be very popular, like, you know, a massive football stadium with thousands and thousands of spectators or whatever. It's like, what's the most popular sports place you've ever been, right? Maybe it could be there are some exercise machines in your local park, and that's where you see a lot of people doing sports. It's not very popular. There might never be more than 15 people there, but it's the most popular place you've ever been. That's what you're going to talk about. So instead of imagining that you have to talk about something outside your world, your own experiences, you don't. So I think what often happens with students is they'll see the topic and they'll panic and go, oh my God, I've never been to a big stadium. I can't talk about this topic. But that's not true. It's not that you need to have been to a stadium. I'm not checking if you've been to a stadium before. And it doesn't mean that, oh, you've never been to a stadium, therefore you deserve a low IELTS score. Well, no, I'm checking if you can speak in English. So if you haven't had that particular experience, doesn't matter. I just need you to speak. And part of your answer could be, I've never been to a big stadium like that. You know, you could explain, I've never been to any big place like that. Probably the most popular sporting venue I've been to is the park, my local park, where loads of people go to do exercise. You know, it's fine. You don't need to have a particular experience to discuss the topic or to get a high IELTS score. So don't tell yourself when you see the topic that there's nothing you can talk about. Just think about in your life what would be, you know, the particular area that you've had a similar experience, be it on a smaller scale. Hello, Aman. Welcome to the lesson. I'm unable to improve my task 1 response. I got 6 in the previous exam while I got 7 in task 2. What strategy should I adopt? Okay, so if it's task response, very likely your overview isn't descriptive enough. There was some inaccurate data in your answer. You didn't include enough data in your answer. It's going to be one of those things. It's going to be one of those things. Again, I'd have to see your essay to tell you exactly which one, but most likely you're making one of those mistakes. It's difficult for me to select data. So there you go. You know, you're either not choosing enough or you're choosing too much. Like if you have a line graph and it's just a straight line and you put in all the points along, that's wrong. That's excessive, where you would only include the start and the end. So if it's a straight line, you don't need to include anything in the middle of a straight line. But, you know, if it's like a shape like that, like, you know, starts here, goes up and then goes down again, well, you'd need to include the start, the end, and that point where it changed direction. So again, you know, it just depends on what the graph is. If it's a static chart, you need to include all the data. So it just depends. It depends on the question. Really good strategy. Thanks, dear sir. You're very welcome, Khalil. And Abdul, I'm trying to use some phrasal verbs in my IELTS speaking answer, but because of this, I'm lacking fluency in my answer. What should I do? I would say stop trying to use phrasal verbs. When you're speaking, you have to rely on the vocabulary that you're most comfortable with, right? So the words that come to your mouth easily, that when you're speaking, you've used these words many times, they're instantly there, ready to go when you're speaking, and you can use them to communicate clearly. Those are the words you should be using in your speaking test. Now, by all means, if you've got 6 months, study vocab every day and improve your vocab. And, you know, by studying vocab every day, reviewing your vocab notebook and constantly learning and refreshing yourself, like refreshing your mind as to the words that you've already looked at, you know, those words will eventually become part of your, you know, your let's say your range of vocabulary that you can use fluently. And when they're ready to go quickly and you don't need to think about them, then, you know, you'll get a higher score. But you can't really influence the vocab score by trying to use words you normally wouldn't use. Because what happens then is, as you said, your fluency suffers, but also you're more likely to use words incorrectly that could potentially make your answers unclear, and that will affect your vocab score. So very often when people try to get a higher vocab score, what does happen is they reduce both their vocab and fluency scores go down because they're not speaking fluently and they're making more mistakes. So that's not how to get a higher score. You're better off to use the words you're comfortable with. Hello, Taban. Welcome to the lesson. Zarbdor. Hello, I have some problems with my listening and mainly reading. How can I improve these skills within 2 months? So we talked about how to improve your reading scores earlier on. If you hadn't joined the live stream, you'll be able to see the recording once we're finished here. The same applies to listening. So it's about doing a practice test, figuring out what mistakes you've made, and taking action to improve those issues. If you have 2 months left, studying vocab is still an option. When you're getting close to the test, there isn't enough time to improve vocab. And the thing about reading and listening is the new words you learn, you will understand them. Whereas when it comes to speaking, the new words you learn, you won't be ready to use them for quite some time. So if it is reading and listening and vocab could potentially be a problem, you do have enough time to improve your vocab to some degree. So you could do both of those things. Then the problem might be, you never listen to English. So the problem is your actual listening skills. So you might need to start reading and listening to English more. But start off with the practice tests, do a practice test, analyze your mistakes, and take it from there. If vocab is one of the biggest problems, you still do have some time to improve your vocab. Okay. And Aman, hi Aman. How to best perform in maps and IELTS listening? Other questions are easy for me, but map questions are overwhelming for me. So I think the main thing you need to do is make yourself familiar with the different features on the map. So they're going to have to use, like, if they say, if there's a hotel over here, they're very likely going to have to say, to the east of the hotel. And you're like, oh, okay, so we're going over here. So kind of making yourself familiar with the different features on the map in case they use those as a reference. Some maps, they'll just start in one place and they'll walk around. So like, they'll start down here and they'll just kind of walk around the building as they're speaking. So in those ones, trying to identify where they're going to start and just being aware of the different labels that are already on the map so you can use those as a reference. And the other thing then is to kind of be aware of the fact that they will go in order. So imagine if it's questions 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And you can see on the map, here's number 12 with a little blank line. It's like, well, that's the first one you're going to hear as well. Or it might be another format where the numbers are 12, 13, 14, 15, and they have the names of the places. So, it might be number 12, a restaurant. And then you're kind of walking around and that the first thing you're going to hear about is the restaurant. So you don't need to worry too much about that. So you kind of using the question numbers to help you identify what's going to be spoken about first or where on the map you're going to be talking about first. That can help as well. But then just like we talked about earlier, just like any practice reading or listening test, for every incorrect answer, what you're doing is you're going back, reviewing what mistakes you made and trying to figure out what exactly happened that resulted in you choosing the incorrect answer. That's also very important. And Abdul asks, sir, if examiner can understand what I say, but I'm not good at intonation, can I be able to achieve a band 7 in pronunciation? No, probably not, because I feel it will take so long to improve intonation. Yeah, it does take, intonation is probably the one that takes the longest time to improve. And even like students can get a band 7 without having perfect intonation, but it's got more to do with if like the examiner can understand what you say. Like someone who's at a band 5, the examiner can understand what they're saying, but there might be some times where they're not sure, or they have to guess from the context, or maybe the word is mispronounced, so they kind of have to figure it out as from listening to the other things they've said. But someone who's a band 5 can be understood by the examiner. So there's a big difference between being understood and being a band 7, Sentence stress would be really important, and intonation as well for band 7. But it does take time to improve, And is the problem that you don't have time to improve, or you're hoping to find an easier way to get your target score? For students who achieve their target scores, very often the difference between a student who gets their scores and doesn't get their scores is the student who gets their scores, they're very willing to take on big problems. And, what seems like an overwhelming amount of work, they'll just take it and get started on it and get going and dedicate themselves to it and, spend hours and hours on it every day. So like that is what I would worry about when I see your message is like, do you have a test on Friday and you don't have time? Or is it like, it just seems like way more work than you want to do? And those would be two very different things. You'll have to find a way to get started and get motivated and keep working on those things. If those are the only things that are stopping you from getting your score, you need to fix them. There's no other real option. Sir, is it feasible? Can I provide live classes? Can you provide live classes for us via Google Meet? Live classes. Live classes. I thought you wanted me to teach you about life. I'm not sure if you're asking the best person for life coaching advice. I have live streams on Zoom. Is the platform that I use. Like I said, you can find the link in the video description there. No, I won't use Google Meet because all the software I have is all connected up and it's all interlinked. So it would be a lot of work for me to rejig everything so that I'm using Google Meet instead. So no, I'm going to stay with Zoom. Aman, you're very welcome. No problem at all. Abdul, I always speak more than 2 minutes in IELTS speaking part 2, and I always miss chance to use second and third conditional structure in my answer because of time constraint, as planned them for the end of my answer. Yeah, you don't have to use second and third conditionals. You just need to speak. And you shouldn't be thinking about what grammar structures you want to use. So like if you're going into the test going like, okay, I want to use a compound sentence and I want to use a relative clause with because and another relative clause with whereas and another relative clause with while, I want to use first, second, and third conditional. That's not how we speak. That's not how we speak in English. It's whatever we're talking about. Do we have the structure we need to get that point across clearly? And, if you have those structures in your repertoire and when you need them, they're there and you're able to use them and you're able to use them accurately, like that's a sign of good grammar. But having a checklist where you're like, okay, now I'm going to use this structure and now I'm going to use this one. Oh, I didn't get to use that one. I'll come back later and try to use that one. You're making things too complicated. That's not how we think about grammar. You just need to have the range of structures ready to go, but your focus should be on what you're talking about. And when you get to a situation where a conditional is the right structure to explain the point that you're trying to make, then are you able to use it appropriately and correctly? So I wouldn't think about grammar in that way. It sounds like you're making things too complicated. What should I do for this? So that was Abdul. Yeah, so there you go. Hi, Samika. Good to see you. Long time no see. And there's Samuel. We were talking earlier on about students who are willing to do the hard work. Samuel is absolutely one of the hardest working students I've worked with. Good to see you, Samuel. Elias, provide more detail on Zoom classes. I want to join. Yeah, so the link is in the video description, I believe. Let me have a quick look on YouTube, see if I put the video link, the link in. There's something wrong. The live stream isn't showing up on my YouTube. I was looking for it earlier on. For some reason, it didn't show up. Hang on a second. I'll find it somewhere else. Yeah, it's in the video description. So if you just click on the video description, I think you'll need to click on see more or just more, and you'll find it there. But yeah, it's there. It's there. Just click on the see more button and yeah, you'll see the details. Okay, so is that the last question for today? Seems like it. Samika, hi sir, just a question. Do you facilitate CELPIP? I do not. I don't know anything about that test at all. No. So, I mean, basically, what I've been doing for the last 15 years is just IELTS and all IELTS. I did a little bit of TOEIC and a little bit of, what's the other one? TOEFL, but not much. So IELTS is kind of my expertise. I haven't done anything on that. So unfortunately, I cannot help you with that. No, it's all IELTS here. Hi, Hala, good to see you here. Okay, so it seems like that's all the questions. Let's leave it there. I'll be back next week. We'll do another live stream on another topic. So take care of yourselves. Best of luck to those of you with tests coming up, and bye-bye.